The moment Aaron Winters saw Melissa Crawford marching across his property line with that smug smile plastered across her face, he knew his peaceful morning was about to implode. She wasn't alone. 3 other members of the Sycamore Heights Homeowners Association trailed behind her like well-dressed vultures eyeing a fresh carcass. "Mr. Winters," Melissa's voice cut through the morning air, her stiletto heels punching tiny divots into his perfectly maintained lawn. "We need to have a word about your renovation." Aaron set down his coffee mug on the patio table, watching as the steam curled up and disappeared. Behind him, the water in his newly renovated pool rippled in the morning sunlight, a stunning azure blue that had cost him a small fortune. The special non-slip cobalt tiles imported from Italy gleamed under the water's surface. Those tiles weren't just for show. They were specifically designed to provide better visibility and safer footing for his rehabilitation patients. "Good morning to you too, Melissa," Aaron replied, standing to his full 6'2" frame. "What brings the welcoming committee to my doorstep?" Melissa's smile tightened as she handed him a thick envelope. "A violation notice. Your pool renovation was never approved by the HOA Architectural Committee. The color scheme violates Section 12, Paragraph 4 of our community guidelines." Aaron didn't take the envelope. "I submitted the plans 3 months ago and received approval." "Well," Melissa said, pushing a strand of her perfectly highlighted blonde hair behind her ear, "the committee has reversed its decision. The blue is too vibrant. It disturbs the visual harmony of the neighborhood." One of her lackeys, a balding man Aaron recognized as Bob Harrington from 2 streets over, stepped forward. "We've had complaints from residents whose properties overlook yours." "The pool is in my backyard," Aaron said, his voice low and controlled. "The only person who can see it is Mrs. Chen, and she's legally blind." Melissa's smile never wavered. "You have 72 hours to drain the pool and begin replacing the tile with an approved neutral tone, or we'll be forced to issue fines of $500 per day until compliance is achieved." As she spoke, Aaron's phone vibrated in his pocket. A text from his receptionist. "First therapy patient canceled. Heard rumors the pool was being shut down?" A cold sensation spread through Aaron's chest that had nothing to do with the morning breeze. How had the word spread so quickly? They had just installed the tiles yesterday. "This is ridiculous," he said. "I'm a licensed physical therapist. This pool is being used for whatever purpose you use your pool is irrelevant, Mr. Winters," Melissa cut in. "The aesthetic guidelines apply to all residents equally. No exceptions." As the HOA group turned to leave, Melissa paused and looked back. "Oh, and your fence is 2 inches taller than regulation. You'll want to address that as well." Aaron watched them retreat across his lawn, his mind racing. He had spent his life savings on this property, specifically for its potential to serve his pediatric rehabilitation patients, children who needed a safe, private space to heal. He looked down at the violation notice in his hand, then at the gleaming blue pool that was supposed to welcome its first young patient that afternoon. Aaron pulled out his phone and dialed a number. "Jacob? It's Aaron Winters. Remember that legal advice you offered when I was setting up my practice? I'm cashing in that favor. How much do you know about HOA law and medical facility zoning?" 3 days later, Aaron stood in his kitchen, staring out at the pool. He had neither drained it nor changed the tiles. Instead, he'd spent the last 72 hours in a whirlwind of paperwork, phone calls, and legal consultations. The doorbell rang. "Right. On schedule," he muttered, checking his watch. He opened the door to find Melissa and an even larger entourage than before. This time she had 5 HOA board members, including Ted Walters, the HOA president, a retired accountant who generally stayed out of the day-to-day neighborhood drama. "Mr. Winters," Melissa began, her voice dripping with rehearsed sympathy, "I see you've chosen not to address the violations." "That's correct," Aaron replied calmly. then I'm afraid we have no choice but to implement the daily fines, effective immediately." She handed him another envelope. "Additionally, the board has voted to revoke your pool privileges until compliance is achieved." Aaron raised an eyebrow. "My pool privileges? To my own pool?" Ted Walters cleared his throat. "What Ms. Crawford means is that your pool must be closed. No swimming, no use of any kind until the violations are remedied." "And if I refuse?" Melissa's smile was shark-like now. "Then the association will place a lien on your property and pursue further legal action. The bylaws are quite clear on this matter." Aaron nodded slowly, then reached behind the door and retrieved a thick manila envelope of his own. "Well, since we're exchanging paperwork," he said, handing it to Ted rather than Melissa, "you might want to take a look at this." Ted frowned as he opened the envelope and began scanning the documents inside. "What's this?" Melissa demanded, trying to peer over Ted's shoulder. "That," Aaron said, "is certification from the State Medical Board that this property is now registered as an outpatient rehabilitation facility. Specifically, a pediatric aquatic therapy center." Ted's eyes widened as he flipped through the pages. "This is dated months ago." "Yes," Aaron agreed. "When I first purchased the property and submitted my renovation plans to the HOA, plans which, as I mentioned, were approved. But," Melissa began. Aaron cut her off. "And these," he continued, pulling another set of papers from behind the door, "are the names of 15 children with various disabilities who have been scheduled for therapy sessions in that pool. Sessions that had to be canceled because someone spread rumors that my facility was being shut down." The group fell silent. "Mr. Walters," Aaron said, addressing the HOA president directly, "are you aware that interfering with a medical facility can constitute a violation of the Americans with Disabilities Act? Or that spreading false information that damages a medical practice could be considered defamation?" Ted's face paled slightly. "Now hold on. I also have here," Aaron pressed on, "a petition signed by 32 families in this community supporting my rehabilitation center. Many of them have children who could benefit from aquatic therapy, but can't afford the rates at the big hospitals downtown." He handed this third document to Ted, whose expression had shifted from confusion to concern. "The cobalt blue tiles aren't just for aesthetics," Aaron explained. "They provide high-contrast visibility for patients with visual impairments and create clear depth perception cues for children with spatial awareness challenges. They're an integral part of the therapeutic environment." Melissa's face had turned an interesting shade of red. "This is absurd. You can't just declare your backyard a medical facility to circumvent HOA rules." Aaron smiled for the first time. "Actually, I can, when I'm a licensed physical therapist who's followed all proper procedures and zoning requirements, which I have." He turned back to Ted. "The final document in that packet is a notice of intent to file suit against the Sycamore Heights HOA for discrimination under the Fair Housing Act and the ADA, along with individual suits against any board members who knowingly participated in actions that prevented disabled children from receiving medical care." The silence that followed was deafening. Ted Walters cleared his throat again. "Perhaps we should discuss this at the next board meeting. In the meantime, no fines will be issued pending review." "But," Melissa started. "Thank you, Mr. Walters," Aaron interrupted. "I look forward to working with the HOA to ensure that Sycamore Heights remains an inclusive community that supports all its residents, including those with special needs." As the group retreated down his front walk, Aaron caught Melissa's venomous glare. This wasn't over, but for now he had bought himself some time. He pulled out his phone and texted his receptionist. "Pool is still open. Reschedule tomorrow's patients. We're back in business, for now." The next board meeting proved to be anything but routine. Aaron arrived early, dressed in a crisp navy suit, and took a seat in the front row of the community center's meeting room. He wasn't alone. Dotting the usually sparse audience were parents with children in wheelchairs, using walkers, or wearing braces. Melissa's face tightened when she saw them all file in. She leaned over to whisper something to Ted, who shook his head firmly. The meeting began with standard HOA business, approving minutes, discussing landscaping bids for the community entrance, and reviewing the quarterly budget. Throughout it all, Melissa kept shooting glances at Aaron and the families behind him. Finally, Ted announced, "Next item. Review a violation notice for 1842 Sycamore Drive." Aaron stood, folder in hand, ready to present his case. But before he could speak, Melissa jumped in. "Before we begin, I'd like to clarify something," she said, her voice honey-smooth. "The Architectural Committee's concerns have nothing to do with the purpose of Mr. Winter's pool. We fully support rehabilitation services for children. Our issue is solely with the aesthetic impact of the non-conforming color scheme." A murmur rippled through the audience. "If I may," Aaron said, stepping forward, "the color isn't merely aesthetic. The specific shade and finish of the tiles serve multiple therapeutic purposes." He turned to address the room. "I'd like to introduce Dr. Sophia Patel, pediatric neurologist from University Hospital, who can explain the medical necessity of the pool's design." A woman in her 50s with salt and pepper hair stood up from the second row. "The high-contrast, blue environment creates visual targeting that helps children with cerebral palsy and other motor control disorders focus on their movements. The specific shade also helps reduce anxiety in children with sensory processing disorders and autism." "That's all well and good," Melissa interjected, "but the HOA guidelines exist to maintain property values for everyone. Surely there's a compromise, perhaps a lighter blue?" "Ms. Crawford," Dr. Patel replied coolly, "would you suggest that a hospital change the color of its MRI machine because it doesn't match the decor?" Several parents in the audience snickered. Ted Walters raised a hand to restore order. "Let's remember that we're all neighbors here. Mr. Winters, do you have anything else to add?" Aaron nodded. "I'd like to introduce Lily Chen," he said, gesturing to a 10-year-old girl who made her way forward with the help of leg braces and arm crutches. Her mother walked supportively beside her. "Hi, everyone," Lily said, her voice small but determined. "Before I started therapy with Mr. Aaron, I couldn't walk without my mom helping me. But after just 3 sessions in his pool, I can take steps by myself." She demonstrated by taking a wobbly but independent step forward. "The blue water helps me see where I'm putting my feet. Please don't make him change it." The room fell silent. Even Melissa had the decency to look uncomfortable. A man in the back stood up. "My name is Richard Santos. My son has autism and has never been comfortable in water until Mr. Winters worked with him. The blue environment somehow calms him. For the first time in his life, he's not afraid of swimming." One by one, parents rose to share similar stories. Ted Walters cleared his throat. "Thank you all for your testimony. This gives us much to consider." Melissa's eyes darted around the room, clearly realizing she was losing ground. While these stories are touching, they don't change the fact that rules are rules. If we make an exception here, where does it end? Aaron stepped forward again. "Actually, the law is quite clear on this. The Fair Housing Act requires reasonable accommodations for disabilities. This is a medically necessary accommodation. Your backyard is not a hospital." Melissa snapped, her composure finally cracking. "No," Aaron agreed. "It's better than a hospital for these kids. It's in their community, it's affordable, and it doesn't feel clinical or scary." Ted Walters raised his hands. "I think we've heard enough. The board will now vote on whether to rescind the violation notice against Mr. Winters' property." The vote was 4-1 in Aaron's favor. The only dissenting vote came from Melissa. As the meeting adjourned, parents crowded around Aaron, thanking him for fighting for their children. Out of the corner of his eye, he saw Melissa storm out, her designer purse clutched tightly under her arm. Ted approached him as the crowd thinned. "You know she's not going to let this go, right?" Aaron nodded. "I figured as much. Just watch your step." Melissa has been running this community for a long time. She doesn't like to lose. True to Ted's warning, Melissa wasn't finished. 2 weeks later, Aaron arrived home from a supply run to find a county code enforcement officer standing in his driveway, clipboard in hand. "Mr. Winters?" the officer asked, consulting his paperwork. "I'm Officer Ramirez from County Code Enforcement. We've received a complaint about unpermitted commercial activity at this address." Aaron set down the boxes of therapy equipment he'd been carrying. "Let me guess. Complaint filed by Melissa Crawford?" Officer Ramirez's neutral expression confirmed Aaron's suspicion. "I'm not at liberty to disclose who filed the complaint, sir, but I do need to verify whether you're operating a business from this residential property." "I am a licensed physical therapist," Aaron explained, "and this property is registered as a home-based medical practice with appropriate zoning variances." He retrieved his permit documentation from inside and handed it to the officer. Officer Ramirez reviewed the paperwork thoroughly. "Everything seems in order here. However, the complaint specifically mentioned excessive traffic and noise disruption." Aaron raised an eyebrow. "I see a maximum of 4 patients per day, by appointment only. There's never more than 2 cars in my driveway at once. And the noise? Children laughing during therapy sessions? Occasionally, yes. I consider that a sign of successful treatment." Officer Ramirez's professional demeanor cracked slightly with a small smile. "Fair enough. I'll note that the complaint appears unfounded." He handed back Aaron's documents. "For what it's worth, my nephew has Down syndrome. Places like yours make a big difference." As the officer drove away, Aaron noticed Melissa watching from her front porch across the street. He gave her a small wave. She turned and went inside without acknowledging him. The next day, Aaron was working with a 7-year-old boy with muscular dystrophy when the doorbell rang. He helped the child out of the pool and into his mother's care before answering the door. A woman in a sharp pantsuit stood on his doorstep. "Mr. Winters? I'm Lauren Hayes from the Department of Health Services. We've received an anonymous complaint about unsanitary conditions at this facility." Aaron suppressed a sigh. "Please come in. I'd be happy to show you around." The inspection was thorough but revealed nothing. Aaron's facility was immaculate, with state-of-the-art filtration and water treatment systems that exceeded health department standards. "Whoever filed this complaint was misinformed," Lauren concluded, signing off on her inspection form. "Your facility is actually cleaner than many hospital therapy pools I've seen." "Thank you," Aaron said. "Would you happen to know who filed the complaint?" Lauren hesitated. "Off the record?" "The complaint came through the HOA office. The pattern continued for weeks. Different inspectors, different complaints, all traceable back to Melissa. Fire code violations, noise ordinance violations, even an accusation that Aaron wasn't properly licensed, which was quickly disproven. Each complaint required Aaron to take time away from his patients to deal with the bureaucracy. Each inspection came back clean, but the constant interruptions were taking a toll. After a particularly disruptive day when 3 separate inspectors had shown up, Aaron called Jacob, his attorney friend. "This is harassment," Jacob agreed after hearing the full story. "She's using government agencies to wage a personal vendetta. We have grounds for a cease and desist." "Will that stop her?" Aaron asked. Jacob sighed. "Honestly, probably not. People like this Melissa woman rarely back down easily, but it creates a paper trail for when we escalate to a restraining order or civil suit." "I don't want to sue my neighbor," Aaron said. "I just want to help these kids. Sometimes the best defense is a good offense," Jacob replied. "Have you thought about going public with this story?" The local news segment aired the following week. "Neighborhood Hero or HOA Rule Breaker: The Battle Over Blue Tiles." The reporter interviewed several of Aaron's patients and their families, filmed therapy sessions in the contested blue pool, and tried repeatedly to get a comment from Melissa, who refused to appear on camera. The story went viral locally, with community members flooding the HOA's email inbox and social media pages with messages of support for Aaron. Ted Walters called an emergency board meeting. "This has gone too far," he told the gathered board members, including a stone-faced Melissa. "The HOA is getting hammered in the press. We look like villains." "We're just enforcing the rules," Melissa insisted. "If we let him get away with this, everyone will want to paint their pools whatever garish color they please." "That's not what this is about, and you know it," Ted replied. "This is about you being upset that someone challenged your authority." "How dare you?" Melissa gasped. "The board has already voted to allow the pool," another member added. "Yet you continue to file complaints with every agency in the county. You're abusing your position." "I'm protecting our community standards," Melissa protested. Ted shook his head. "No, you're harassing a neighbor who's helping disabled children. And you're doing it in the HOA's name, which puts us all at legal risk." "What are you suggesting?" Melissa demanded. Ted looked around at the other board members who nodded in agreement. "We're asking for your resignation from the board, effective immediately." "You can't do that," she sputtered. "Actually, we can. Bylaw 23, Section A allows for removal of a board member for conduct detrimental to the association. We've already taken a vote." Melissa looked around at her former allies, now avoiding her gaze. "This is outrageous. I've given 8 years to this community." "And we appreciate your service," Ted said firmly. "But it's time for new leadership." The following Saturday, Aaron hosted an open house for his therapy center. Families from across the community came to learn about his services. Even Ted Walters stopped by with his grandchildren. "Nice turnout," Ted observed, watching as Aaron demonstrated exercises with a teenage girl recovering from a sports injury. "Better than I expected," Aaron agreed. "How are things with the HOA?" Ted grimaced. "Melissa's threatening to sue us all, individually. But our lawyer says she doesn't have a case." "And the new board member?" "Sarah Chen, the retired occupational therapist from Maple Street. She's already proposed updating our bylaws to better accommodate medical home businesses." Aaron smiled. "Progress." As Ted wandered off to get a lemonade, Aaron noticed a familiar figure lingering by his front gate. Melissa stood watching the gathering, her expression unreadable. Aaron excused himself from his patient and walked over. "Melissa," he said with a nod. "I didn't expect to see you here." She pressed her lips together. "I wanted to see what all the fuss was about." An awkward silence stretched between them. "The work you're doing," she finally said, gesturing toward the children in and around the pool, "it appears to be beneficial." Coming from Melissa, this was practically a glowing endorsement. "Thank you," Aaron replied. "Would you like to come in? See the facility up close?" She hesitated, then shook her head. "No. I just wanted to say that I'll be dropping my complaints. All of them. It's clear that the community supports your work." Before Aaron could respond, she turned and walked away, her heels clicking on the sidewalk. Later that afternoon, as the event wound down and the last families were leaving, Aaron sat by the edge of his pool, feet dangling in the cobalt blue water. The sun was setting, casting golden reflections across the surface. His phone buzzed with a text from Jacob. "Just heard from my contact at the health department. All complaints against your facility have been formally withdrawn. You're in the clear." Aaron smiled and sent back a thumbs-up emoji. He looked around at his backyard, now transformed into a place of healing for dozens of children. The battle had been exhausting, but worth every moment. As if on cue, his phone buzzed again. This time it was a photo from one of his patients' parents. Their daughter standing unassisted for the first time with the message, "She couldn't have done this without you. Thank you for fighting for our kids." Aaron looked at the image for a long moment, then back at his controversial blue pool. Sometimes the most important battles were fought in the most unexpected places, even in the calm waters of a suburban backyard. 2 months after the open house, Aaron's practice was thriving. Word had spread beyond Sycamore Heights, and families from neighboring communities were now bringing their children for therapy. He'd even hired an assistant therapist to help with the increased patient load. But success brought new challenges. The increased traffic, while still modest by commercial standards, had some neighbors grumbling. Not publicly, of course. The viral news story had made it clear which side public opinion favored. But Aaron could feel the sideways glances when he checked his mail or the abrupt ends to conversations when he approached groups of neighbors chatting on the sidewalk. One evening, as Aaron was closing up after his last session, he noticed a familiar car parked across the street. He'd seen it there 3 times that week, always around closing time, always with the same occupant who never got out. Melissa Crawford sat behind the wheel, watching his house. Aaron had had enough. He crossed the street and approached her driver's side window. She jumped when he tapped on the glass, then reluctantly rolled it down a few inches. "Can I help you with something, Melissa?" Aaron asked, keeping his tone neutral. "Just waiting for my husband," she replied stiffly. "He's walking with our neighbor." Aaron glanced around the empty street. "For 3 days in a row? At exactly the same time?" Melissa's knuckles whitened on the steering wheel. "I don't have to explain myself to you." "No, you don't," Aaron agreed. "But if you're going to keep showing up, why not come inside? See what we actually do here. I told you before, I'm not interested." Aaron studied her face. Behind the haughty expression there was something else. Curiosity? Doubt? "What is it that bothers you so much about my work, Melissa?" "Really? Because I don't think it's about blue tiles." Melissa looked away. "You don't know anything about me." "You're right, I don't," Aaron conceded. "Just like you don't know anything about my practice or my patients. Maybe we should both change that." For a moment it seemed like she might actually agree. Then her phone rang, shattering the moment. "I need to take this," she said, already rolling up her window. Aaron stepped back and watched her drive away, wondering what it would take to break through that wall of hostility. The answer came unexpectedly the following week. Aaron was at the community pool, the public one maintained by the HOA for all residents, swimming laps during his lunch break. Despite having his own pool, he enjoyed the larger dimensions of the community pool for his personal workouts. As he finished his final lap and pulled himself out of the water, he spotted a commotion at the far end of the pool deck. A small crowd had gathered, and several people were shouting for someone to call 911. Aaron grabbed his towel and rushed over. In the center of the crowd, a boy of about 12 lay on the concrete, his lips blue, his mother frantically performing CPR. "I'm a physical therapist," Aaron announced, pushing through. "What happened?" "He was underwater too long," a bystander explained. "Hit his head on the diving board, I think." Aaron knelt beside the boy, checking his pulse. It was there, but weak and erratic. "Has anyone called an ambulance?" "They're saying 15 minutes, someone replied. "Too long." The boy needed oxygen now. Aaron took over CPR from the exhausted mother, using the technique he'd practiced countless times in his certification courses. As he worked, he scanned the crowd, looking for anyone who might have medical training, and there, standing frozen at the edge of the crowd, was Melissa. "Melissa," he called out, "I need your help." She looked startled at being singled out. "Me? I don't know what to—" "Just come here and help me," Aaron insisted. "Now." Something in his tone broke through her hesitation. She hurried forward and knelt opposite him. "I need to keep compressions going," Aaron explained rapidly. "I need you to tilt his head back and give 2 rescue breaths when I tell you. Can you do that?" She nodded, her earlier antagonism completely forgotten in the crisis. Together, they worked to keep oxygen flowing to the boy's brain. After what seemed like an eternity but was probably only a few minutes, the child coughed, spat up water, and began to breathe on his own. By the time the paramedics arrived, the boy was conscious and responsive. As they loaded him onto a stretcher, his mother grasped Aaron's hand. "Thank you," she whispered. "I don't know what would have happened if you hadn't been here." Aaron nodded, suddenly aware of how exhausted he felt. "He'll be okay now." As the ambulance pulled away, Aaron turned to Melissa, who stood hugging herself, looking shaken. "You did great," he told her. She shook her head. "I just did what you told me to. That's all any of us can do in an emergency." He paused. "How did you know what to do for rescue breathing?" Melissa's eyes stayed fixed on the departing ambulance. "My daughter had epilepsy. I learned CPR when she was diagnosed." Had. Past tense. Aaron felt a cold weight settle in his stomach. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. Melissa nodded, still not looking at him. She would have been 14 next month. Aaron didn't know what to say. He'd never imagined this kind of pain lurking beneath Melissa's perfectly maintained exterior. "Is that why you've been watching my house?" he asked gently. "Because of the children." She finally met his eyes. "I wasn't watching your house. I was watching the pool." Her voice broke slightly. "Amelia, my daughter, she had a seizure in our bathtub. I stepped out for just a minute to answer the phone. By the time I got back—" She trailed off, but Aaron could fill in the terrible ending. "That's why I fought so hard against your facility," she continued after a moment. "The idea of all those vulnerable children in water. I kept thinking about what could go wrong, how quickly it can happen." Understanding dawned on Aaron. "You weren't being vindictive. You were scared for them." Melissa looked away. "I know it wasn't rational. You're a professional. You take precautions. But every time I saw those children going into your yard, all I could think about was Amelia." They stood in silence for a moment, the sounds of the pool, now returning to normal activity, washing over them. "Would you like to see the safety systems I've installed?" Aaron asked finally. "Maybe it would help to know exactly what precautions we take." Melissa hesitated, then nodded. "I think I'd like that." The tour of Aaron's facility the next day was revelatory for both of them. Aaron showed Melissa the multiple layers of safety features: the pool alarm that detected unexpected splashes, the underwater motion sensors, the special non-slip surfaces, and the strict protocols he followed for every session. "I never have more than 2 patients in the water at once," he explained, "and never without a parent or second therapist present. Every session is recorded by those cameras, and my assistant or I are certified in pediatric CPR, water rescue, and seizure response." Melissa touched the edge of the pool, running her fingers over the controversial blue tiles. "And these really help the children?" "They do," Aaron confirmed. "The contrast makes a huge difference, especially for kids with visual processing disorders. Come back sometime during a session and you'll see for yourself." She nodded thoughtfully. "Maybe I will." As Aaron walked her to the door, Melissa paused. "I owe you an apology." "Several, actually." "We both made assumptions," Aaron replied. "Let's start fresh." "I'd like that," she said, offering her hand. He shook it, feeling a subtle shift in the air between them. Not friendship exactly, but the beginning of understanding. True to her word, Melissa did come back to observe a therapy session. Aaron was working with 8-year-old Max, who had cerebral palsy, helping him strengthen his core muscles through specially designed floating exercises. Melissa sat quietly at the side of the pool, watching as Max, initially cautious, gradually relaxed in the water. By the end of the session, he was laughing as Aaron helped him float on his back, something that had terrified him at the beginning. "He's made amazing progress," Max's father told Melissa, as they waited for Aaron to help the boy change. 6 months ago, he couldn't even put his face in the water. "Aaron seems very good with him," Melissa observed. "He's changed our lives," the father said simply. "Max sleeps better now. His muscle spasms have decreased, and he's even started trying to walk with less support." After Max and his father left, Melissa lingered, watching Aaron clean up. "You know," she said, "I might have been wrong about more than the tiles." Aaron raised an eyebrow, waiting. The community could use more services like this, she continued. Proper facilities, I mean, not just backyard operations. No offense. None taken, Aaron assured her. I'd love to expand, but the zoning in this area is tricky, and commercial property is expensive. Melissa tapped her manicured fingernails against her purse thoughtfully. The old community center on Oak Street has been sitting empty since they built the new one. The HOA owns it outright, but we've been paying maintenance costs for years. With no return, Aaron set down the equipment he'd been storing. Are you suggesting what I think you're suggesting? It has a proper indoor pool that's been sitting unused, Melissa pointed out. With some renovation, it could be turned into a genuine rehabilitation center, one that could serve more families without disrupting the residential character of the neighborhood. The HOA would never approve something like that, Aaron said skeptically. Melissa smiled for the first time, a genuine smile, not the sharp one he'd come to associate with her. The board might, with the right proposal and the right advocate. I may not be on the board anymore, but I still have influence. Why would you help me with this? Aaron asked. Melissa was quiet for a moment. Because Amelia would have benefited from someone like you, she said finally, and because sometimes the best way to honor those we've lost is to help those who are still here. 6 months later, the Sycamore Heights Pediatric Rehabilitation Center officially opened in the renovated community center. Aaron's private practice had grown into a proper medical facility with 3 therapists, including himself, and a waiting room filled with children and parents from across the county. The center's logo, a stylized wave in the same cobalt blue as Aaron's original pool tiles, adorned the sign outside. At the ribbon-cutting ceremony, Aaron found himself standing next to Melissa. They weren't friends exactly, but they had developed a respectful working relationship through the renovation process. Congratulations, she said, as they watched children and families tour the new facility. It's everything we hoped it would be. We couldn't have done it without your help with the zoning board, Aaron acknowledged. You're surprisingly good at navigating bureaucracy, Melissa chuckled. Years of HOA politics taught me something useful after all. As the celebration continued around them, Aaron noticed a woman with a teenage girl in a wheelchair hovering near the entrance, looking uncertain. New patient? Melissa asked, following his gaze. I don't recognize them, Aaron replied. Maybe they saw the article in the local paper. He excused himself and went to greet them. The girl in the wheelchair looked to be about 14, with a shy smile and leg braces similar to the ones Lily Chen had worn. Welcome to our center, Aaron said warmly. I'm Aaron Winters, the lead therapist. Are you interested in our services? The mother nodded. My daughter Sophie has spina bifida. Her doctor recommended aquatic therapy, but the hospital program has a 6-month waiting list. Aaron smiled at Sophie. Well, we happen to have an opening next Tuesday, if you'd like to try a session. Sophie's face lit up. Really? I've never been in a pool before. Is it scary? It can be at first, Aaron admitted, but we go at your pace, and the water actually makes movement easier, not harder. As he spoke, he felt someone come up beside him. The blue water helps too, Melissa added, addressing Sophie directly. It's a special color that makes it easier to see where you're going. She glanced at Aaron. At least, that's what the experts tell me. Aaron suppressed a smile at her choice of words. Why don't I show you around the facility? He offered the family. You can see our therapy pool and meet some of our staff. As he led them inside, Aaron couldn't help but reflect on the journey that had brought them here. From a confrontation over blue tiles to a community resource that would help countless children. Sometimes the most important battles were fought in the most unexpected places, and sometimes your fiercest opponent could become your most valuable ally. In the end, what mattered wasn't the color of the water, but the healing that happened within it.